Whenever you need me, I'll be ready.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Boom, boom, boom. Welcome to a place where we all have to understand that we all have blindness in our lives. If we can understand our blindness and we can understand our blind spots, they can be positive. Then we can also be able to go forward towards our vision. And the most important thing that we can think of is our vision. Our vision needs to match our core beliefs, our core strengths, our core values. If our vision does that, if it's in alignment with that, then it'll make all the difference in the world. So we have a big guest coming up today. But before that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who we have coming up after this. And I'm not going to tell you who they are, but we've got some great guests. So listen today, be attentive, and ask as many questions as you can. Also, share this video with as many people as you can think of. So if you would do me a favor and share this on your pages, that would be great. So getting more people in this community, the better off it's going to be. So I'm so appreciative of you being on today, and I'm looking forward to our special guest. Without any further ado, I want to bring on our special guest today, Mr. Patrick Donadio. Good morning, Patrick.
Hello, Brian. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. So, Patrick, I've got to ask. We didn't talk about this, so tell me a little bit about your story. So, I'm gonna give you 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna go offline, but I'm just gonna give you the floor, and we'll just take it from there. So, tell me your story.
Okay, Brian. Well, I was born in a little log cabin. No, actually, ironically, as you should mention that, my grandparents immigrated here from Italy in the early 1900s. And so both of my parents are first generation Italian Americans. And my parents are both blue collar. They passed away now. But we grew up in a really small community, and my grandparents live right next door. So I grew up with my Italian grandparents next door, which is very unusual these days. You know, not a lot of people have their grandparents close by, let alone living next door. So I learned a lot from my grandparents and my parents, and my Italian culture has played a very important role in my life. And so early on, I learned a very important lesson from my parents. That was, if you want something, you got to work hard for it. So one of the early lessons I learned was the harder you work, the greater the reward. And I think that was a valuable lesson that my parents taught me, because I had both a summer job and a job at Christmas break. Every break when I was in college, I started working at the age of 15. Saving money so I can go to college, and was instilled those good values from my parents and my grandparents. And that was a very important part of growing up. I also, when I grew up in a home that was Catholic. So I was very active in church, and I attended church, and I was a reader in church, which is where I think I got started with my whole interest in being in front of audiences and public speaking. And in high school, I was in theater. I was also president of student council. So the reason I'm sharing a little bit about my background is it's important to think about where we get, our visions and our alignments and how they come together. And a lot of who we are obviously comes from where we were. And as you go back and think about where you were and what you did growing up, you can start to get some insights into what are some of the things you like to do. And I learned early on that I enjoyed being in front of groups, and I enjoyed interacting and communicating with others. And so I decided I wanted to go to college to get a degree in broadcasting. So I went to Higher University, And it was kind of interesting because I didn't know anybody on campus except my friend from high school who was in the debate team. And we both were going to go to a higher university. And turned out about middle of the summer, my friend says, "Hey, guess what? I'm not going to college." I said, "What?" I said, "You're supposed to be the only person I know. The whole reason I'm going to higher university is because of you." And he said, "Well, I changed my mind." So here I am. I was, so nervous because I probably wouldn't have gone to higher university if my friend wasn't going to go. So I got there, and very early on, I learned that I'm good at meeting and making friends. And that was something that I've taken with me all these years. And it's been a valuable tool as I've grown my business in the past few years. It's all about relationships and others. So that's just a quick background, Brian, to let people know a bit about where I was and where I am. This is my 33rd year as a professional speaker, trainer, and coach. So I quit my job about 34 years ago. And here I am with you today, my friend.
What was your job 33 years ago?
Well, I was an executive director for a state association, and I actually ran conferences, and I actually hired some speakers. And in fact, one of the speakers that I hired, I don't know if you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can. It's a movie about Frank Abagnale, who was a fraud, and he forged checks when he was very young. And so he was one of the speakers that I hired back when I was an executive director. We paid him a lot of money, and I was like, wow, this guy gets a lot of money. And I know he's pretty good, but I think I'm pretty good. So that's pretty much how I decided I would do this. And let me just say up front, Brian, I don't recommend this to any of your viewers, but I just quit my job and said, that's it. I want to be a speaker. And boy, I think that wasn't the best way to go. I think it would have been better to started thinking about this and building it a little bit before I jumped out.
Yeah. So, I did that. I jumped and I just said, hey, I'm going to be a speaker. So, that was really hard to go through that process. So now I have a job. I have a part-time job anyways. I work at the Ohio School for the Blind. So that's all in alignment with what I do and my core values and my core beliefs. So you taught me something great and from your friend Nito Cobain about your vision, your alignment, and making sure you have that internal and personal congruency.
Yeah, intentional congruence is what it's called, Brian.
Intentional, yes.
Intentional congruence. Everything you do ties into everything else you do. And that was a very, very important lesson that my friend Nito, who actually wrote the foreword to my book, Nito Cobain, who's a president at High Point University, who came to this country with $50 in his pocket, and ended up, becoming Horatio Alger Award winner and president of a university and on the board of multi-billion-dollar companies. But very important, and I hope your viewers, let me just restate that for people who are listening. When you think about vision alignment, intentional congruence says that everything you do ties into everything else you do. So, for example, today, we're sharing our ideas with you, and you're sharing them with others. That's intentional congruence, right? We're leveraging what we're doing to get the most out of it.
Right. So, and while Patrick is taking a breath here, I want to encourage all of you to tell us where you're coming in from. So, I know there's a lot of people online that are listening. Just put in the comments a hashtag live. If you're listening to a replay, put in hashtag replay. But tell us where you're coming in from. That would be great. So, thank you, Patrick. Let me ask you another question. What do you think is the biggest factor in your success?
Well, I mean, before I met Nito and intentional congruence, I would say that in and of itself is one of the biggest factors. Mm-hmm. But as I said a little bit earlier, I think one of the biggest factors was the fact that I had this upbringing with my Italian culture and my grandparents. And, like I said, all my grandparents came from Italy. And so I learned a lot from my grandparents, especially my grandparents who lived next door. And my grandfather had a huge garden. And in the summer, he would ask me to come and help him. And I remember him saying one time to me in his little, accent, "You're going to be a farmer. You're going to be a farmer." I said, "Well, I don't think I'll be a farmer, Grandpa." He says, "Well, I think everybody's a farmer because everybody's got to plant something. Everybody's got to cultivate something. Everybody's got to grow something. Everybody's got to harvest something, And a very wise man who had no education, could barely read or write. So I think the big influence I had was from my upbringing, which was the idea that, nothing comes easy. If you want something, you got to work hard for it. And so I've worked really hard and I put in many hours. But I do want to share, Brian, that talking about vision alignment, when I started my business, I actually realized that that vision alignment, or the vision I had was, the harder you work, the greater the reward, really wasn't serving me anymore, because I didn't have any staff then. I had, 4 staff at the association, and now I start my business. I have no staff and I'm working like a dog. And my first year, I think I made $8,000 if I was lucky. And I said to myself, well, I guess I better work harder if I want to make more money. And the next year I worked harder, and I didn't make much more money. And then I realized to myself, it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Yeah.
And that's the drive that I think has really changed the way I operate, is that I think about how can I do things in a more efficient, more effective, and a smarter way. It's not about working harder. So I think your show and your theme is wonderful about vision alignment, because every vision has to come from within, and it has to help us get an idea of where we want to go, which is actually the first step in my impact process, which I call the intention, right? So every communication starts with a thought, right? Think before you speak.
Yeah. So for the viewers that don't know about your process, your impact process, IMPACT. CT. Make sure I spell it right.
Yeah.
But talk to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, the process that I created is a really nice approach. And one of the things I think is part of my success has been my whole idea about systematizing. And so I was in Japan as a Goodwill ambassador many years ago, and I learned on my trip there. I went to McDonald's one day because I was getting really tired of eating Japanese food, and I wanted to have some home cooking. So I went to McDonald's and I had a Big Macu, which is what they called the Big Mac, and an order of fries. And I was eating those French fries, Brian, and I said to myself, man, it's amazing. These fries taste exactly the same as they do in Columbus, Ohio. And I realized that day that the reason they can get such a consistent outcome is because they had a process or a recipe or a system. So when I came back to the States, I started thinking about how can I systematize or create processes. And that's when I started to think about my impact process, which I'll just very quickly tell you the 6 keys, because people probably want to know what that IMPACT stands for.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So the 6 keys in the impact process are the I is for the intention, right? Think before you speak. The M is for the message and the method. Once you know what you want to achieve, then what do you say and how do you say it in a way to get that intention achieved? Like for today, our method is using, video, but you can do this in a lot of different ways. The P is for the person. And that's another thing I hope you'll spend some time with in the future, if not today, Brian, talking about how our personality is also part of our alignment. And when you think about blind spots, your personality gives you both strengths and weaknesses. So the P in the process is think about the person you're communicating with and how do you adjust to that person. The A is activate. How do you make sure the message you're sending is engaging, which we're trying to do today by asking people to type in the chat or send us your questions.
Yep.
And the C is to clarify, because every communication is complicated and it could be confusing. So you want to check for understanding and clarify. And then the T in the impact process is to transform. And that is, how do you, take your words and turn them into actions? So that's a very simple process that I think your viewers can use when they want to think about vision alignment.
Yes, most certainly. I think they all can use that. And I think it's important for us all to kind of refresh our memory about that. Because at one point or another, we've all touched on that at one point or another. But where could people get more information if they wanted to learn more about this process?
Well, Brian, up on my website, patrickdonadio.com, they can go there. If you even just want to read more about the impact process, you can go to the homepage and scroll down, and there's a little bit about the book. Also, if you go to the impact book page, again, you don't have to buy the book. I share the impact process and talk a little bit about what each of the keys are. Mm-hmm. So that's a good place to go for some more information about the impact process. Okay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's good to know. And our listeners, they certainly don't want to have to buy a book every time I bring somebody else on. So, the fact that you have this information on the website is it's incredible. Thank you so much for that.
And real quick, Brian, I just if you want to go to the website and go to the resources page, I've got probably 6 or 8 different articles. They can feel free to download also. So I'm happy to give your audience some ideas and tools that they can use.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So you've got a lot going on, and I wondered, and there are so many So many obstacles we run into at different times, and obviously COVID is an obstacle. It's one that it's been kind of interesting to be able to work our way around. But what are some other obstacles that you have that you're still working on?
Well, I think the biggest obstacle for all of us is ourselves. I mean, we can get in our own way. And I think when you talk about, your vision, I talk about your intention. We could talk about the mindset. Everything is driven by the beliefs we have, the beliefs we have about ourselves, the beliefs we have about others, the beliefs we have about the economy, about what's going on in the world. So for me, the biggest obstacle I got to keep working on is myself. And how do I stay, positive, and how do I stay focused? And if you don't mind, Brian, I might take a second and just, one of the things I do in addition to speaking is I do a lot of coaching. And when I started becoming a coach about 20 years ago, I realized that my goal is to help people change. And I thought, if you don't mind, I could spend just maybe a minute talking about the change process. So if people want to make a change in their life, they can understand the 4 steps in the change process.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So you can do these in any order. I'm just going to walk you through them, in a certain order, but they can be done anyway. But the first step to change is awareness. If you're not aware of something, you can't change it. So one of the things I think is helpful, and you talk about this, is how do you have the ability to see your blind spots? Who can help you identify what you're, struggling with, what's getting in the way? And so that's the first step to change is awareness. The second step is your beliefs. So your beliefs drive your behaviors. So what is it you believe about yourself, about, the people you work with, about your customers, about the economy that is either serving you or harming you? The third piece of the process are behaviors. And of course, once you're aware of something, you have a belief about it, and then your belief drives your behavior, which is what you do. And then what you do drives what you get. So let me give you a quick example for people just to understand this. First time I saw myself on video, Brian, was back in 1987. And I had a client record me, and that's a few years ago. And I had a big mustache back then. And I got the video, brought it back home, put it in my VCR. You know what a VCR is, Brian?
I've heard of that, yeah.
And I'm watching myself on the video, and I have a big mustache. And literally, like every 2 minutes, I'm doing this as I'm talking. I'm talking and I'm twirling. What's it look like when I do this, Brian?
It looks like you're picking your nose.
Yeah, it looks like I'm picking my nose. And when I saw myself, I thought, oh my gosh, how long have I been doing that? See, I never knew I did that. So the awareness that I realize I'm doing this, the belief is I look stupid, right? So if I don't want to look stupid, don't do this, right? Change the behavior. And the outcome is you don't look as stupid. So awareness is a very important part of the process. And that's why I like what you talk about, Brian, is understanding your blind spots. And sometimes there are things, that's why they're called blind spots. We don't see them. We don't know them. But let me go back real quick to that example and just say to our audience today, when I saw myself do this, I believed I looked stupid, right? Mm-hmm. The belief of me looking stupid drove myself to not want to do that. But what if that day when I saw myself, Brian, I said, wow, that looks really cool. All right, what would I be doing now? I've been doing it with 2 hands. Hey, how you doing? I'm the coolest guy you ever met. So the thing I want you to think about in change is your belief drives your behavior. If you believe it's something that's not going to be helpful, you don't want to do it. If you believe it's something that's going to work or serve you, you want to do it. So when you talk about the biggest obstacle that gets in my way, it's continually focusing on the beliefs I have about myself and others and how I can align those in what's really going on so I can get the most out of life and the most out of what I'm here to do.
And that kind of goes back to intentional congruence as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because once you know what your value or your vision is, then you want to make sure everything aligns with that, right? Everything you do ties into everything else you do. So for me, my impact process is pretty much that. Everything I do goes back to my impact process. In my coaching programs, in my speaking programs, in my interactions with customers, I'm using the impact process all the time. So that's kind of like, I guess you want to say what my vision is. My vision is to make a greater impact on others in the world. And I do that through my impact process.
Yeah, that's a great process. You mentioned you said 4 different steps. So there was awareness, beliefs, behaviors, results.
Yeah, or outcomes. Yeah.
Okay.
So awareness, belief, behavior, results. And you could do it in any order. For example, you could say, like, this is a good time of year, Brian, if people are doing a lot of planning for the year, right? And so when you want to plan, you could work backwards and say, okay, what does it look like December 31st, 2021? What's my year look like? right? What have I done that was successful? How did I achieve what I wanted to accomplish? And you create in your mind, the result, and then you work backwards. You say, so if I had that kind of a year, let's say I made X number of speaking engagements, or I had X amount of money in my savings account, you ask yourself, work backwards now. So what did I do, right, throughout the year to get to that result? And then what did I have to believe in order to do what I needed to do to get to that result? And when you work backwards, guess what? You actually create awareness. So you then say to yourself, wow, if I was going to get that kind of result, I really had to be more comfortable, more confident. I had to stretch myself, whatever it might be. And so you can work the process forward, backward, or anywhere in between.
Wow, that's good. Man, I tell you what, I have so many guests come on, and I feel as though you're the one that's really speaking to me. Yeah, and everybody does a great job of speaking into me. I'm hoping that the audience is getting the same sort of information that I'm feeling. So this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
So tell me, what brings you clarity? How do you do this?
Yeah. Well, I don't do this alone. I have a coach. My coach and I have been working together for 20 years.
Wow.
So I meet my coach every 2 weeks. I'm in a couple different mastermind groups. And do your audiences know about masterminds? Have you talked about that, Brian?
We've talked a little bit about masterminds. Why don't you tell us what a mastermind is to you?
I mean, a mastermind group, it goes back to Napoleon Hill back in the 30s, right? A mastermind group is a group of people that you meet with, that you can talk through issues with, and you can help each other be accountable. So I've got actually 3 different mastermind groups I've been involved in. And technically, Brian, NSA and NSA Ohio and National Speakers Association, that's our mastermind group also, right? We have each other that we can talk with when we need some help. So I've got my coach, I've got my mastermind groups, I've got my NSA friends, and then I got my good friends. I have friends that I interact with, and I'm really blessed, Brian. I have some really good friends that I've known for years who are comfortable telling me when I'm doing something well and when I'm not doing something well.
They call you out?
They call me out.
No,
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Hey, before I feel like I'm bouncing all over here, so forgive me, but we've talked a lot already. I know you're Italian, and I know that there's a huge space in your heart for food, Italian food, I'm sure. Talk to us a little bit about your favorite, and maybe you don't go out for pizza, but what is your favorite kind of pizza that you go for?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to mention any particular pizza company because I don't want to, bias anybody. But
Sure.
I love pizza. I could eat pizza every day. Of course, I don't. But there are two kinds of pizza that I like. I like a nice old style. When I was growing up, my parents and my grandmother made pizza all the time, every Friday. And so we had what I call a traditional pizza, which was tomato sauce, green peppers, and some, like Romano cheese. So that's my favorite go-to. But as I got older, I like a good pepperoni pizza. And I particularly like pepperoni when it's a little bit crunchy, like you can bite into it and you get a little bit of a crispness.
Yeah.
So anybody that makes a nice crunchy pepperoni, that's one of my weaknesses.
Okay. Sorry for the tangent. But I've been thinking about it and I want to make sure we talked about it. So that's good.
Yeah. And real quick, Brian, and again, I'm not trying to sell anything, but if people are interested, if you go to my website under the resources page and scroll all the way down, I don't tell a lot of people this, but if you scroll all the way down, you're going to see a picture of my mom and it says Taste of Italy. And there's a link there. If you click there, I got a whole Italian page, if you believe it or not. There's a whole Italian page that's got a little video of my mother making sauce on Sunday. And I give out my mom's Italian recipes. I got her manicotti recipe or wedding soup recipe. So for your viewers, if they want, feel free to go to my website, resources page. You got to scroll all the way down. It's not something you're going to find. It's kind of like a little secret. I don't show it to everybody. So that's a nice place to go to get a little more about my Italian.
All right. Yeah, so that's good information. So go to /resources. Make sure I'm spelling this right. But yeah, should be good. So let's see. Put it up here. Is that it?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, anybody listening to this, go to /resources, go to his website, to Patrick Donadio's website, and then go to resources to get more information on those different recipes. So
yeah, just scroll all the way down. You'll look for the Italian picture of my mom cooking, and then you get the resources. So
I know one of the other big things for you is it Easter with a lot of different desserts they have put out. I know I've seen on Facebook before.
Yeah, my wife and I have done many years. We've done a dessert party. And so we started out doing the 12 desserts of Christmas, when we first met, 28 years ago. And so we do a dessert party every year. My wife makes every dessert. It's gone up to now we have probably like 25 different desserts. Wow. And I do all the dishes. So I always have, I don't want to show my hands because they're still a little, but we didn't do one this year, obviously, because of COVID. We didn't want to, bring anybody out and expose anybody. So, but we do a big dessert party. And yeah, that's been something that we've been doing for years.
Huh. Wow, that's great. So you got a lot of stuff going on. What do you do? How do you recharge?
Well, it's funny. I think one of the things you'd ask me was, what's my morning routine? I think that was a question you sent me. And that part of my morning routine, Brian, is I spend a little bit of quiet time. And then I have some meditative readings that I like to do. Sometimes I'll do a professional reading. Ironically, speaking of Nito has a book that I have as part of my morning readings. And he has 365 days of inspiration. So I may read a section from that book. I have some spiritual books that I might read, but I try to spend every morning spending a little bit of quiet time reading something to get me ready for the day. That's one way I kind of recharge. Another way is I love music. So whenever I have the time, I want to really relax, I put on some good music. And obviously, I'm a big Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin fan. So those are my two favorite go-tos. But I like any kind of music. I mean, I used to be a country western DJ, believe it or not, in college. I actually was a spinner records at the WOUB radio in Athens, Ohio.
Huh. Wow. Now there's a whole nother story there.
Oh yeah. I don't want to go there, but I could talk to you for days about. I love radio. I actually had my own DJ company. I did weddings back in the early '80s. I had my own setup. Brought all the albums and records. Which people don't do anymore today. So, anyways, yeah. But music is one of my things. That's one way I recharge.
Wow, that's great. So you talked a little bit about what you're reading. So. What else can you tell us that obviously the impact process is huge, and it's really what you do. So in terms of blind spots, what else can our listeners know that will help them? Because I think about blind spots, and I know how blind spots are something that we all need to recognize, but we don't always have the right people telling us about our blind spots. And I think we need to have somebody that will we ask for about our blind spots, or we ask them, right? So how do you handle that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Brian, in the impact process, again, since you brought it up, that in the T step, here's a simple exercise anybody can do. First of all, it's always better if somebody else can point out your blind spots, but I think we can start that process ourselves by doing what I call a WD exercise. And so after any event that you feel has not gone the way you would like or isn't doing as well as you would like to, and I tell my coaching clients, my speaking clients, that, hey, after a speech, do a WD. And here it is. You ask yourself two questions, right? Question number one, what did I do well? What did I do well in this presentation? What did I do well when I talked to this customer? What did I do well when I was interacting with my family? Question number two, what would I like to do differently the next time? So the WD is a nice way to uncover the blind spots, right? What did I do well? Yeah. What would I like to do differently? And when you think about what you want to do differently, you're going to uncover some of the things that you can get better at. And so blind spots aren't always, something really terrible. They may just be a skill that you want to work on.
It may be something you need to just you need to accept. So for me, one of the blind spots I had was the impact that I was having on the world. It was a blind spot of mine. I didn't really realize that. So that blind spot was a positive blind spot.
Yes. So yeah. So WD, if your viewers would just take a piece of paper, put a W on one side, well, put a D on the other side, different, and ask yourself those two questions. What did I do well? What can I do differently? You can start to uncover your own blind spots. And then if you have other folks that you really appreciate and trust, ask them the same question. Say, hey, Brian, you saw me deliver that presentation. What did I do well? What can I do differently? Or hey, Brian, you saw me interact with so-and-so. What can I do differently? What did I do well?
Okay. No, that's great information. I appreciate you being on today, Patrick. This has been phenomenal.
Oh, you're welcome, Brian. And
You
listen, I want to just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, my friend. I met you early on when you started, and you're making a great impact on others, and you're putting a lot of work into. I know it's a lot of work to put these shows together, getting the guests to come on. So I want to just applaud you and encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because I know you got a great message, and I know you're making an impact.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Hey, Patrick, if you'll stick around in the green room while I close the show, I'll come back and we'll chat a little bit more.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you for having me on today, Brian.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Take care. Wow. Wow. Another great show. Oh, my gosh. How do we do this? How do we keep doing this? We have speaker after speaker with just loads of information and just all kinds of goodness. So hopefully you got a lot out of that. I know I did. But tomorrow we have another special guest. And this special guest is Darren LaCroix. And Darren LaCroix is another speaker that is just set the world on fire with what he's doing. So his speaker university that he runs, it's been phenomenal and done a great job. But there's also a lot of other stuff that he's been doing that we need to talk with him about. And then we also have another gentleman coming on, and his name it eludes me right now. Matt. Yeah, I don't have his name in front of me, but he's coming on tomorrow for Stroke of Genius, and we're going to be talking about how he is not one with disabilities, but he serves those with disabilities. So another great show coming up at 11:30 tomorrow. So I hope you can be there. I appreciate you all being on. This has been phenomenal. And I see some people have commented. We've gotten a comment. So Veronica Stewart, hey, hi Veronica, how are you? It's so good to see you. So I'm glad to see the different people attending, and anytime you're on to let me know that you're there is phenomenal. So I appreciate that. This has been great. Another great episode of Vision Alignment. Hopefully this means a lot to you, and you will continue to listen and let me know if there's ever anything you want to hear more about. Thank you a lot. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, remember to keep one eye on the road.